If you lead anything, a team, a project, even a family, you probably know that the old command and control playbook, it just doesn't always work.
Right. It might get you compliance for a while, but it rarely gets you real commitment.
Exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive into a framework that tries to solve that. And it's built on a concept you don't hear much about in the boardroom.
No, you definitely don't.
Leadership grounded in love.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. That sounds soft, maybe a little too comfortable. But I think you're going to be surprised.
Oh, definitely. The source material we're looking at, which comes from years of intensive leadership coaching, presents this as a really rigorous, actionable system.
A 3x3 framework, a whole matrix, and it demands, frankly, a lot more strength than most traditional models.
It really does.
And the coaches behind this, they make a pretty bold claim. They say leadership grounded in their definition of love transforms everything.
Everything, from your internal culture to, your actual performance metrics.
So our mission today is to unpack that. First, how do they even define love in this context? And then how do they map that huge idea onto 9 specific practices?
Right, across the personal, the interpersonal, and all the way up to the systemic level.
But let's start with that friction point. Why that word? Why love? I mean, we have terms like conscious leadership or ethical management.
Yeah, why not use those?
Why did they feel that love was the only word big enough to hold all the complexity of modern leadership? Okay, let's unpack this.
That paradox is completely intentional. If you think about the usual language of leadership, words like resilience, strategic, efficient, they often just miss the human part of the equation.
Yeah.
The thing that actually drives sustainable performance.
The messy stuff.
The messy stuff. So they chose love precisely because it's the only word they felt could hold both the supportive side and the intensely demanding side.
So what does that include?
They're super clear on this. This isn't just about being nice or affectionate. For a leader, love has to mean self-awareness, clarity, compassion, courage.
Okay, those make sense.
But here's the radical part. It also has to include things like boundaries, accountability, decisiveness, and bold action.
I see. So the strength of the model is that it refuses to separate care from high standards.
That's it, exactly. It's not about being nice, it's about being whole.
And demanding that same wholeness from the people around you. It sounds less about comfort and more about confronting reality head on.
Absolutely. The material says it explicitly. This framework is not for leaders who want to keep things comfortable or just maintain the status quo.
So who is it for?
It's for people willing to do the hard internal work, to get back to what they call their true essence.
Which means what, exactly?
It means getting crystal clear on your core values and then actually sticking to them. And it means letting go of all those old limiting beliefs that make you operate out of fear.
And to do that kind of internal work, you have to make some pretty big mindset shifts right away. The sources point to 3 of them that are really the foundation for everything else.
Yeah, these are crucial. The first one is fundamental. Lead from clarity, not from protection.
What's the difference?
Well, when you lead from a place of protection, you're always trying to manage perceived risks. You might hold back information or hide your own vulnerability.
Sure, to protect yourself or the team from bad news.
Right. But clarity is about defining reality, the good, the bad, all of it, and then moving forward with purpose and transparency.
I think we've all seen that protection-based leadership, the manager who avoids a tough conversation just to avoid rocking the boat.
Of course. And that leads directly into the second shift,
Right.
choosing alignment over approval.
Alignment with your values.
Exactly. Alignment means making decisions that are true to your deepest values and your organization's purpose, even if those decisions are unpopular right now.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine your quarter is looking a little shaky. Choosing approval might mean cutting a corner on quality to boost the numbers and please the board.
Right, a short-term win.
A short-term win. But choosing alignment would mean sticking to your long-term quality standards, even if it means taking a temporary profit dip.
Okay, so that puts the leader right into a position of potential conflict, which I guess brings us to the third shift.
It does. And that is choosing courage over convenience.
Because leadership is almost never convenient.
It's inherently about doing the difficult thing. I mean, choosing convenience, sending that easy email instead of having the necessary face-to-face talk, or putting off a layoff, needs to happen. That is the fastest way to just destroy trust.
So courage in this model is the engine. It's what turns good intentions into actual leadership.
That's a great way to put it.
And this whole philosophy, it's not just theory. This is where it gets really interesting, where it becomes a practical toolkit.
Yes, the 3x3 matrix.
Right. The framework applies these shifts across 3 distinct arenas: our personal lives, our interpersonal relationships, and the systems we operate in.
Which gives us 9 concrete practices.
So let's break that down. Let's start with the first core practice, that first column, awareness, the cognitive piece.
Precisely. And the whole thing, it really starts and ends with the self. So in the personal arena, awareness means authentic self-awareness.
So just knowing yourself.
Deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's deep clarity on your fundamental values, your purpose, your identity as a leader. Because if you can't even articulate what you stand for,
Then all your decisions will feel random to your team.
exactly, they become situational and confusing.
And I'm guessing this first step is non-negotiable. You can't just skip the personal work and hope the rest holds up.
No way. Without that foundation, you're always just reacting. You're stuck back in that protection mode we talked about.
Okay, so once you have that self-awareness, where do you take it?
You apply it to the interpersonal arena, it becomes awareness in relationships. Meaning, you start to understand exactly how your words, your tone, even your body language, how all of it shapes the environment.
Whether it's building trust or tearing it down.
Right. It's about seeing your immediate relational footprint and actually taking ownership of it.
That moves us from just thinking about our own feelings to seeing how we impact others. And then there's the biggest level, the systems arena.
Yeah, this is the macro view, understanding interconnectedness.
So seeing the big picture.
It's seeing the big why behind every single process and policy. A leader with this kind of awareness understands that, say, a small change in an HR policy doesn't just stay in HR.
It ripples out.
It ripples out everywhere. It affects morale, workflow, customer service, maybe even the entire supply chain. You're moving beyond thinking in silos to seeing the whole ecosystem.
Okay, so that's the first pillar, awareness, knowing. Now we shift from the cognitive to the emotional and relational part, compassion.
And this is the one that so often gets misunderstood.
As weakness.
As weakness, yeah. But the framework pushes back on that idea hard. On the personal level, compassion becomes compassionate self-care.
Which means treating yourself with the same kindness you'd give to a team member who's struggling.
Exactly. And this isn't self-indulgence. It's resource management. You simply can't bring strength and patience to other people if you're running on empty.
Okay, but how does that work in a really high-pressure environment? I mean, isn't there a risk that self-care just looks like you're not committed?
The key is clarity. Compassionate self-care in this model means setting really clear intentional boundaries around your time and your energy.
And communicating them.
And communicating them transparently. It's a form of strength, not a retreat. And you're modeling sustainable behavior for your team. If the leader is constantly in crisis mode,
then the team feels like they have to be too.
Of course.
That makes sense. Okay, so moving outward, what does compassion look like on the team level, the interpersonal level?
It shows up as empathic presence. And this is way more than just, passive listening.
So not just waiting for your turn to talk.
No. It's actively listening to understand, to validate, to make sure the other person feels truly seen and valued, even, and this is crucial, especially when you disagree with them.
Right.
That's how you build the deep relational trust you need to handle conflict later.
And finally, compassion on the biggest scale, systems.
This one might be the toughest challenge. It's called inclusive, connected leadership.
Which means?
It means moving compassion from just one-on-one interactions into structural design. You're actively looking at your systems, hiring, promotions, how you communicate.
And you're asking, are these fair?
Are these equitable? You're trying to bake belonging and equity into the very structure of the organization, so you're not just relying on the good intentions of a few managers.
I see.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, these first 2 pillars, awareness and compassion, they show that this idea of leading with love is just as much about internal reflection, like self-care.
As it is about external design, like building equitable systems.
Exactly. Yeah. But knowing and feeling, well, they're not enough. You need the doing.
We do. And that brings us to the third and honestly the most demanding pillar, courage. This is the action pillar.
This is where it all gets tested.
Where clarity over protection and courage over convenience become real.
Right. And again, we start on the personal level. Here, courage is courageous decision-making.
Meaning you act in alignment with your values.
You act in alignment, staying absolutely true to your purpose, even when you are under immense pressure. Even when the stakes are high or things are ambiguous, you resist that temptation to take the easy way out.
That's the moment of truth for a leader. But I think the single most powerful insight from the sources, the real pivot point for me, was applying courage in the interpersonal space.
Compassionate accountability.
Yes, that phrase just. It perfectly sums up the entire framework.
It really is the ultimate fusion of care and demand. Compassionate accountability means you balance that deep care for the individual with really clear boundaries and high standards.
The key insight being you have to separate the person from the performance issue.
Yes, you deliver the critique, but it's rooted in a desire for that person to succeed and grow, not in anger, not in punishment.
Can you give us a quick example? I mean, where does the framework say you draw the line between being supportive and just, enabling bad behavior?
The line is the shared standard, and it's communicated with empathy. So if a team member keeps missing a deadline, traditional leadership might just issue a warning.
Or some other punishment.
Right. Compassionate accountability asks, what is the real barrier here? And it tries to address that with care. But, and this is key, once that support is offered, the boundary has to be enforced. It's saying, I care about you immensely, and this standard is non-negotiable for the health of our whole community.
So you're turning accountability from something disciplinary into something developmental.
That's it exactly. And then finally, courage applied to the systems arena, community activation.
Which is about mobilizing people.
Yeah, but not just to execute a list of tasks. It's about mobilizing them for meaningful collective change that's aligned with that higher purpose we talked about.
You're turning a group of employees into a purpose-driven movement.
Within the entire structure, yes.
So when leaders can actually navigate all 9 of these practices, the source material promises some really specific transformative outcomes.
And these are not soft results.
Yeah.
The first is turning teams into communities. That's a huge shift in psychological safety and loyalty.
Which has a real impact on retention and collaboration.
No, a massive impact. When people feel safe and connected, they innovate more, they take risks.
The second outcome is turning decisions into legacies.
Because when you root every decision in alignment and clarity, each action reinforces the long-term vision. You stop just reacting to things.
And you start building something that lasts.
Yes. And the third, and maybe the most powerful outcome, is turning work into a place where people feel alive and purposeful.
And that outcome, a workforce that's intrinsically motivated, that's what really validates the whole framework.
It proves that leading with this bigger idea of love, it strengthens both performance and humanity at the same time.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner? We started with this kind of abstract idea of love in leadership, but we ended up with a really rigorous map, a 3x3 framework covering everything from your own personal values and self-care.
All the way to structural equity design and courageous, compassionate action.
Yeah. This isn't just a philosophy, it's a complete operational guide.
It is. It's a full toolkit. But the journey always has to start with a single step. And the sources invite you to think about 2 really powerful questions based on everything we've discussed.
Okay.
First, which one of these 9 practices, from understanding your own relational footprint to designing for equity, which one is calling out to you right now?
And they suggest you look for the one that makes you feel the most resistance.
Yes. That resistance, that discomfort, that often points to the greatest area of need.
And the second question.
The second is, where are you currently defaulting to convenience or to seeking approval? And how could you shift right now to lead with more love in a way that strengthens both performance and humanity in your own specific world?
So this raises a really important final thought.
For you, the learner, which of these concepts is the most uncomfortable for you to tackle first? Because that discomfort, whether it's having to make a truly courageous financial call or setting a clearer boundary with compassionate accountability, that's probably where your greatest growth is waiting.
And where your leadership journey really begins.